where we have to accustom ourselves to Asiatic self-assertion, the communist menace. The world is altogether so different from what it was when I was young that it's an extraordinarily difficult thing for an old man to live in such a world.
So you can actually find YouTube videos of Russell and read some of his works. His most important work, the one that set him off on his career, was the Principia Mathematica. Keep in mind that Sir Isaac Newton's main book was the Principia. Am I getting them confused? They're both
I tried
Principia.
going through that book once, and then I stopped after I realized he spent 20 pages trying to justify why 1 plus 1 equals 2.
It's hilarious. He gives
It was not my cup of tea.
he's in that book, he and Sir Alfred North Whitehead, who initially was his math tutor at Cambridge, but then joined him as he became an adult, and together they actually wrote that book. And it's a 3-volume work, which we do have in the consortium library. As far as I know, it's still sitting there on the shelf. If you do check it out, please be careful with it. The last time I looked, it was worth over $800, so don't hurt it. Yes, actually, just don't take it out in the rain, etc., because I don't think it's replaceable. But in any case, that was the book where he and Alfred North Whitehead created the first code, logical code. And so what those 3 pages were was logical code, the kind of code that we now use for computers. The code, that was the beginnings of that. And it wasn't aiming at computers because we didn't have them yet. What it was aiming at was creating a logical language that would escape all of the dilemmas of normal human language that creates so many confusions, right? So by creating a language that was basically a code, you would essentially have the definitions absolutely clear, and there would be no confusion. So you change everything, and as part of that, they were also demonstrating that all mathematics is actually based on logic, and the logic that they're talking about is the 3 laws of thought. The 3 laws of thought is a thing is what it is, and not another thing. It's law 1. A thing either is A or it's not A. That's the law of the law of non-contradiction is A is not the case, not A.
All right. Yes, it is law of non-contradiction.
So that's law of non-contradiction. Excluded middle.
Okay, excluded middle. Yeah.
So based on those 3 laws of thought, you can end up then with a logical notation, basically, that can explain all mathematical rules, including adding 1 plus 1. It does take 3 pages to go and show you in that code how 1 plus 1 equals 2. And that's just hilarious. I in my copy of it, I could write in my copy of it. I thought how hilarious that was. But the trouble with that was British thought, especially, and a lot of American thought, ended up being totally focused on language. And it was important. Thanks to Hegel, and we realize, okay, what structures our perception of the world is an important aspect of that is our language. So what language you speak, in a sense, is your operating system. So if you're, say, have we talked about like Chinese as a language? That if you're speaking Chinese, you have a clear difference from the Western European kind of thinking process. The Chinese have said that no, they cannot do Aristotelian logic, right? And the thing is, well, but our whole discourse bases statements being true or false on that ability. And if you're not speaking a language that enables that, can you have true or false statements? I've asked lots of people about that, and there are books about it, arguing that there's a kind of pragmatic approach that enables emphasis of what might in Western European languages be thought of as a true statement. That emphasis is the equivalent of saying that that's true without actually being able to say it's true, if that makes sense. It doesn't to me, but that's the way it's been explained to me. But of course that changes the whole pattern of how a person thinks when you're thinking that way. What's interesting, of course, is that they have studied people that have speak fluent Chinese and not English. They've studied people that speak fluent Chinese and some English, people that speak fluent Chinese and fluent English, and the other direction as well. And what you could discover is in testing them that they're thinking differently in the language of the test. If your test is in English, they can think that way, but if you're speaking Chinese, they can think that way. And they are significantly different. Remember, there's 7,000 different human languages. Did you have a question?
I was going to ask you if it's pretty much like a Western versus Eastern, the same thought process could be to any European language, French to Japanese. It's the thought.
Yeah, well, my understanding is Japanese has adapted. They now have a second, they have an alphabet as well as the kanji. Is it called kanji in Japanese? Yes. Yes?
I don't know. But Aristotelian thought, if it's the same for all European languages.
I believe so. I haven't studied all of them, but they all seem to have Greek influence, right? So that if you think this started with the Greek language and Greek thought influenced Latin thought, and actually Byzantine Greek is Greek, and the Russian language, for example, is actually included in this as a European language because it's actually a Greek-based. Cyrillic is kind of a Peter the Great version of Greek.
German, though, and like the more Northern European languages.
Still based off of Latin.
Yeah, they're still.
Is it still based off of Latin?
Yeah.
Yes, the grammar is.
It integrated those aspects of like German as a whole.
Bill, right?
Ben.
Ben. Oh, well, thanks for.
Is there any ideas that either Chinese or Japanese ideas that we're unable to, like the vice versa, some English ideas that are harder to explain in Chinese or to talk about, just the Aristotelian ideas? Is there any in that vice versa effect that it's harder to explain or comprehend in English?
I'm sure. Yes. There are benefits of those other languages. Those other languages have capabilities that escape people that don't speak that language fluently. And so that's why there's
about this in some of these lectures, the sort of little veil, I guess, like an incoherency between the East and the West. It's like some notions about like life and all that, that to us seem, I guess, all over sort of into this world.
well, a problem in doing this though is we think we're translating their works, but when you actually translate, say, Confucius into English, that's not Confucius anymore. The only way to really understand their thought process is to actually become a fluent speaker of that language, I would argue. it's actually even worse than that. Willard Van Orman Quine, who I met, by the way, I attended one of his lectures. Of course, Brian McGee got it.
The headings. There are two headings, but I don't recognize the existence of minds, of mental entities, in any sense other than as attributes or activities on the part of physical objects, mainly persons.
That must mean then that you not only reject idealism, it must also mean that you reject.
So, there's Quine. Died December 25th, 2000. But I met him at my alma mater. He gave a fascinating lecture pointing out that the mathematical logician, which is what he was at Harvard, their main job now is to help scientists be able to say in English what they're talking about. And the problem is, when you look at physics, did I slobber on you? I'm sorry, I suddenly saw, sorry. That particles don't exist constantly, they're in and out of existence. And so there's not a specific object that exists, it's instead a relationship that exists. And the relationships are constantly in flux. So when they're talking about quantum particles, he explained in front of us that if you had, particle A in the box on this side and particle B in the box on this side, and then that you had particle A and B in this box and nothing in this box, and particle A and B in this box. But then you could also imagine that you could have particle B in this box and particle A in this box. And he pointed out that that wouldn't be any different than having particle A in this box and B in this box, because each of those particles is not a specific object in itself. It's only the relationship that occurs that's important. And those relationships we refer to as predicates, not subjects. So in modern science, you don't have subjects anymore, the nouns, they're gone. Instead, we only have the predicates, the relationships. And as a result, logic is referred to today as predicate language. I don't know if this is, no. That didn't work. Okay, the syntax of predicate logic, that'll work. So, I won't get into this whole thing, but basically, we use quantifiers. So we have different quantifiers that explain how many we're talking about. Quantifier, right? So you can talk about all of the members of the set, or you can talk about some of the members of the set. Remember Aristotle? We have all of the members, none of the members, some are, some are not. So the kind of quantifiers we need are two. We need a universal quantifier for anything you pick, right? And for the synthetic statements we need, there exists an X such that, right? And then you have your predicate explaining what X is. So X is just a variable, because we don't actually have existing nouns anymore. Instead, what we have are the predicates, the situation, the categories that apply to X, right? So that's an update, by the way, on Bertrand Russell's logic, and it actually comes out of Bertrand Russell's logic. He talks about quantifiers, quantification theory became the thing, and so if you're translating that into computer code, you end up with quantifiers at the beginning of each statement. so that you know how many you're talking about, et cetera. But when Bertrand Russell introduced this to try to clarify the kinds of problems that people have and fix communications, it actually worked, by the way. It took a while, but when you think about it, when we're on the internet, we have universal requirements for the code, and everybody accepts those regardless of which culture you're in. So you could go on the internet and see Russian sites and listen to Russian if you like, to find out what their views of the news